So here we're going to discuss another Tennyson Gambit that I just played today, and once again I'm going to break with tradition and play somebody under 2100 because I started a new profile, and sometimes it's useful to see what it's like and how to beat somebody who's not really very highly rated. It's sometimes very difficult for a higher rated player because you have to be patient and you can't blow them off the board in some cases. And this is a good example of this. I play the Tennyson Gambit against these people, and when there's nothing there, there's nothing there. So what we're going to do is remember that these people who play the center counter gambit are quite comfortable with it and have studied it for the most part, know all parts of the opening, and so we're going to foil that. And our goal is to get a decent center, and this is a pretty wild game, so you're going to see some traps, simple traps that I decide actually not to take advantage of, and I'll explain the reason for that in a second. So um, we're going to have the engine on while we're doing this. As you see, computer's recommended move is e takes d5. Tennyson Gambit's knight f3. This is the Tennyson Gambit. This is a very useful thing to know because of a variety of reasons. But computer suggests declining this gambit with e5. And in this particular case, this person knows what they think is a refutation to the Tennyson Gambit. This is one of the many ways of dealing with it, and it's this move. And this is a move that we need to look at because it does work, and it's a good move. And even though white just has a slight advantage here, um, what's interesting is that we don't have our engine on. There we go. White's got the slight advantage. The proper response is d3. And d3 covers the knight with the bishop, which was being attacked. And so there's various ways of responding to it. E takes. And now there's something that's a bit of a trick in the Tennyson Gambit. The computer's recommending knight takes c3, and it only gives us a slight advantage. And saying, well, the queen can check here, and that's its number one move, which it does. So this person knows, even though this person is like only rated, I believe, in the 1700s somewhere, they know this variation quite well. And so now we have three pieces developed. Okay, let's count up what's going on here. Okay, the pawns are, black is missing none, we're missing one. And we're about to be missing two, and black's about to be missing one. So for a pawn down, we've got three pieces developed. This is one of these games where black's got his queen out early, probably not such a good deal. So now in the classical Tennyson Gambit fashion, there are people who say that the really, really great move here is queen to d8 check. And queen to d8 check obviously gets the fork on f7 and then the recovery of the queen. And then eventually we're going to have to get rid of this pawn on c2. But supposedly this is a trap that gives white a great advantage. And frankly, I don't feel like playing this kind of trap against a 1700 player. So the less equality I can give him and the more imbalanced, the happier I am. And I want to keep these queens on the board. So I take. And as you can see, the computer says that that's pretty much just as good. It gives about the same advantage. So the trap is not something I'm going to play. Now, it's suggesting e6, and what this player plays is h6, as I recall. And now I'm going to get a better game if I play knight takes knight to b5. Knight to b5 is not something I played in this game. However, it's a very decent move, and I think the whole idea is to get the black knight stuck on a6 and establish a bulkhead for the knight out there and start attacking along a diagonal on the f4 line. And it is kind of interesting that it's coming back to knight to f3, which is what I actually played in the game. So its first choice has defaulted to my first choice. Queen to a5 is what was played. And now here's a shot that I simply didn't know about and I missed. And I didn't understand how powerful this was. But if you play b4 here, it's a poison pawn. It forces him to lose a lot of time. He's going to have to move queen to f5 after which you get in bishop to d3. So then you'll have all your pieces developed pretty much, but if he takes the pawn on b4, you can move rook to b1, and amazingly, there's very little defense against, like, he can move back to a5, then you move rook to b5, and then you've got all kinds of amazing things going. So sacrificing yet another pawn here is a killer, and that's something that I didn't do. So as you know, I'm not the greatest player in the world. However, I'm better than like the vast majority. So here we go. Bishop to c4. That gives up all my advantage. So instead of b4, I make a move where it says now if black plays carefully, he actually has an even game. And so I'm perfectly happy playing this position. You know, I'm out of theory here. I've got all my pieces developed except for my rooks. Black has none of his except for his queen. And so I think I'm going to win. You know, I know it's an even position, and against a computer, no doubt I'll draw. So against the 1700, I'm going to win this. Knight to f6. Okay. And the computer was recommending moving a pawn. So I'm going to castle queenside. Computer's recommending castling kingside, and I almost did that. Now, I didn't see any real reason not to castle queenside here because my a-pawn's protected a number of times. The c-file is not really that susceptible to being opened, and his queen's still in an awkward position. I want to get a rook developed, so that really the idea of it was, yes, I'm doing something a little risky here, but I'm also putting my rook on d1. So as you can see, with proper play, black's going to be up a third of a pawn. So it's recommending e6. Instead, he plays c6. Interesting that the computer wants me to retreat bishop to d3, d2 threatening the queen, or bishop to d4. This was a little bit just a standard developing move again. And now he can play e6, and once again, you know, I'll have every single piece on the board developed, and he'll only have a knight and a queen. And since he's 2 pawns up, the computer says he's up half a pawn. And he's still up, as you can see. And now it's getting a little more difficult to find moves, but the whole idea is to suppress the advance of that e-pawn in some way, and ultimately perhaps even pressure that e-pawn in such a way that we can take advantage of the fact that he's so undeveloped with his f8 bishop. Now, as we're beginning to see, white's beginning to get an advantage here, and king to b1 is a very tempting move. So as bishop to d4, I move my knight. And that's somewhat of a flawed move. And he should move like knight to b6 to d5, something like that. But the fact is that he's very tempted to now get his bishop out. And it says knight to c5 was the recommended move from Stockfish 8. Now, this engine here isn't using knight to c5 anywhere that I can see. It says g6. See, it sees the importance of the f5 square. We call these f5 squares for knights like this a Kasparov knight. You know, in many cases he'd like sack something. He'd sack an exchange or something to get one of those knights on that square. So I think half the idea behind something like knight to b6 would be to secure that with the bishop on c8. Now it's going to f5 anyway, and as you can see, white now has close to an advantage, but they're saying equal game. I don't see how it's equal. It's equal to the computer. That's about it. You know, if you're a strong, 3,000 plus computer, it's equal. And now, of course, he has to play very carefully. I was expecting b5. There's a g6 is an interesting move. There's sacks in the air everywhere if he starts fooling around too much. He moves queen to c7, which turns out to be a blunder. He thinks he has to protect his d6 square, and we're going to see very quickly how that unwinds. Interesting that it has a lot of alternatives like moving the king and bishop to b3 and stuff like that. But f4 is the right move, and it took me like a little while to find this move, but I did play it. And now bishop to b4, look at that, it says, but I'm still way up, so. He is beginning to panic here and try to get rid of that knight, because the e-file is about to open. And it says bishop to b4 is the right move, at which point he'll be down close to 3, but now he moves there and he's down more close to 5. So this is just simple calculation. I didn't hesitate at all. I know for a fact pawn takes pawn is obviously at least close to winning, if not outright winning. So g takes f5. It says he should take, and of course what that would open the e-file with the win of a piece, and a giant storm where we'd be up 6 would follow. Now it says knight to e5 is the way to go, which is what he did. So he's got at least some good computer moves. And here's a shot coming up. The shot is knight to b5, which also I didn't play. And obviously, if pawn takes, then bishop takes back check, discovering on his queen. So I didn't really see where that because I have a knight on f5 that's hanging, and he can take it with the bishop, and I have to be careful. And for a while here, I was calculating bishop to f4, and I noticed bishop to f4 probably just fails because he can do a variety of things, and it's not the worst move in the world, but it looked to me like maybe bishop to d4 was a little more accurate, which is, I believe, what I played. So I guess you could call this a blunder. I had knight to b5 where I'd be up 8.5, and instead I played bishop to d4, and now I'm only up 4 or 3.5. So it wasn't the most perfect, beautiful, exact thing. However, it wins. And it's just very difficult to cover that knight. So there are all kinds of things coming straight down to the king, and this is kind of the point of the Tennyson Gambit, is to get that middle open, and now we are obligated, absolutely obligated, to destroy the black position by keeping his king in the middle. So now, yeah, we're up 4. So he takes, attacking my queen, and I didn't hesitate at all. I just took, attacking his queen. And the reason why is that I'm going to take something with check, and if he moves to the wrong square, we're even going to have mating threats. So he has to pretty much take my queen. I'm going to take his queen with a discovered check, and then he's going to be in a position of losing more pieces. So he's going to resign very shortly here. Check, check. And now I just take his bishop. And as you can see, we're a piece up. And threatening bishop to d6. So at this point, black resigned. So that was the Tennyson Gambit today, and I hope you enjoyed it.